Thank you, Meredith. What a powerful lesson for us about authenticity, about we're better together than we are as individuals. Please take a moment to hear from one of our sponsors as they set the stage for our next speaker.
Good morning. I'm Matt Paul, president of DTE Gas, and it's an honor to have the opportunity to say a few words to such a distinguished group. Thank you to the Chamber for inviting me today and for hosting the CEO Summit. During these tumultuous times, it's important that the business community come together and share. That's why this next panel discussion, Innovating, Surviving, and Thriving in the New Normal, is so important. This has been a year unlike any other, and I'd like to take just a few minutes to share some of DTE's experiences. Back in March, when we first began to understand the severity of this pandemic, we focused on determining how to best balance two priorities. First and foremost, keeping our 10,000 employees and 3 million customers safe. And secondly, to continue to provide our essential services, reliable, 24/7 delivery of electricity and natural gas. We quickly set up an incident command structure so we could safely and efficiently accomplish these priorities across the company. We were among the first companies in Michigan to shut down all non-essential work, things like construction projects and maintenance. This meant sending approximately 2/3 of our employees home to either work from home or to remain in standby, something that we called home reserve. And we committed to no layoffs. All of this came at a tremendous cost, and they were extremely difficult decisions. And I know our CEO, Jerry Narcia, took a lot of criticism. But we knew we could either be early or we could be wrong. For those employees that were required to continue essential emergency work, such as repairing electrical circuits and fixing gas leaks, we implemented new Ppe Protocols, many of which are now standard across the state, but at the time were not universally being used. Things like required mask usage, gloves, frequent hand washing, workplace sanitation, social distancing, one person per vehicle, and for those required to enter homes with known COVID infections, full hazmat suits. We also sequestered several employees with critical and specific skill sets, including those that operate our control rooms. Then, with key processes and protocols in place, on May 1st, we were one of the first companies in the state to restart the majority of the work that had been shut down. And we implemented something that we called our emergency response plan, a plan that heightened our focus on safety and COVID protocols and also laid out a financial recovery plan. We needed everyone's help to recover, and we asked for it. We were transparent with the entire organization with our plan to do things like move work from O&M to capital, take more work in-house, and carefully manage our overtime costs. We asked our teams to look at every dollar and help us find ways to safely manage our costs. The response by our team has been tremendous. Those difficult decisions to shut down work early, implement safety protocols, and commit to no layoffs has led to increased levels of engagement and collaboration across the organization. And while we have more work to do, we are well on our way to recovery. And the team also kept their focus on service excellence throughout. Our people are the reason J.D. Power's recent survey ranked DTE Gas #1 in the Midwest for residential customer satisfaction. I'm also proud at how DTE stayed focused on helping our communities. We worked with our nonprofit partners across the state to help 500,000 families with basic needs, including over $150,000 in food assistance grants to nonprofits helping families in West Michigan, as well as over $2 million raised through the DTE Foundation matching fund drive for the Michigan Association of United Ways and Michigan Community Action for communities across Michigan. We also provided support for small businesses, helping them access PPE and funding through the stimulus PPP programs. Our foundation donated over 800 safety kits to small businesses in Michigan. And we partnered with the Grand Rapids Chamber and Muskegon Lakeshore Chamber of Commerce in this effort. I know that each and every one of you could tell a similar story about your experiences. I've seen countless examples of great companies and organizations across our state rallying to do the right thing by their employees, customers, and communities. We've come together to share best practices and support our communities without compromising our mission to continue to strengthen the state that we love. By the way, our people have done all of this while continuing to balance their personal and family lives, which have also been turned upside down. I have 4 sons, ages 16 to 24. My youngest son, Weston, has autism and epilepsy and has been hospitalized for the basic flu over the years. So my wife has been in a tight bubble with Weston since March, with limited interaction with the rest of our boys. Speaking of my other boys, my 20-year-old at Purdue recently contracted COVID-19. Fortunately, he's on the upswing and nearly through his quarantine. But as challenging as our personal situation has been, I know it's mild compared to many of those challenges faced by others, particularly those that have lost loved ones during this time. That's why it's critical that we all remember those around us are facing personal struggles and that we must continue to treat each other with care and empathy. So it's been a year of tremendous challenges, both professionally and personally. That's why this next discussion is so critical. I look forward to listening and learning from these distinguished experts. And I'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for all you are doing to establish a better normal here in Michigan. And again, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to open this important discussion. Enjoy.
Thanks, Matt. I'm excited to be moderating our first panel of today. And Matt gave us a great example of what we're after, sharing his personal story, not just his business story. No topic is timelier than our need to adapt, adjust, and pivot to survive these unprecedented times. Our first panel has done exactly that. They have adjusted, they have adapted, and they have survived. I would like to introduce my friends on the stage with me. Starting to my left, Emily Lokes, Community Affairs for Studio C, Kirsten Kemp, owner of Pure Bar, and Chris Andrews, founder of the Mitten Foundation. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are all from businesses that have been significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm going to start, Chris, with you. Your business, when we think about the flow of things, though we're not seated this way on purpose, was the first to open. Kirsten has been open for about a month, and Emily, we all celebrate with you that Friday, I believe, is your day. So, Chris, let's start with you. Like so many of us, I know that you had pre-COVID plans about where your business was going to be at the end of 2020. I've heard stories about you driving to Ohio to pick up picnic tables, shifting perhaps from microbrewed beers to hand sanitizer. I think about all your collective experience over the last 7 months, and I wonder what the word pivot means to you now compared to what it may have meant to you before.
Well, for me personally, the pivot was less about going towards something new and more about going towards something old, which for me was my startup mindset and rediscovering that entrepreneurial spirit, and which had been at least a little bit lost since the last 7 years of running the business and managing it. But it became apparent early on that I could not manage my way out of COVID, so I had to go back and locate that hustle that I remember. In going to Ohio, for instance, to pick up picnic tables and setting them up in a rain isn't something that I envisioned doing in my 8th year of running a successful business. But it was, I don't know, it was therapeutic for me. It was exciting to go back and be uncertain about the future and to use that creative problem-solving part of myself that I think had been a little bit lost in the last 8 years. And as far as pre-COVID plans, ours, like everyone else's, were pretty much destroyed. We had come off a pretty tough 2019. It was a year where we saw our highest revenue year ever and our lowest income ever. So we spent January and February, me and my business partner, Max, confronting some tough truths and making some painful cuts. And we came up with a great plan. We were going to start it on March 1st, and then everything went sideways. But again, it pivoted me back to those startup questions we used to ask ourselves. Why does the world need this company? Why are we special? And we started thinking like that again. And we doubled down on our commitment to service and even broadened that definition because there weren't that many customers to serve, quite frankly. So we brought that concept of service and philanthropy that's always been a big part of us, and we doubled down on it and made it the biggest part of us. So we started serving our community. We made hand sanitizer for first responders. We handed out pizza slices to children who suddenly found themselves without free school lunch. We handed out pizza slices to the people that were helping clean up after the riots, which is something I never thought I would say here in Grand Rapids. So to that extent, I have COVID to thank for reconnecting us with that original mission and those lofty ideals we started with.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. So you're hearing things that many of us have experienced, right? You're hearing words like hustle. You're hearing words like back to our entrepreneurial roots. You're hearing things like reinventing ourselves. Many of us are in the exact same situation. Kirsten, I want to go to you next. We know that you were a recipient of one of the Kent County Small Business Grant Programs. You adapted and moved some of your trainings outside and have only recently been able to reopen. Tell us a little bit about what this has been like for you.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. Honored to be here. I do want to mention the Kent County Small Business Recovery Program. Thanks to the grants, relieve some of the financial burden for 2 businesses that have been closed for 6 months. Also, thanks to the Chamber for making an impactful video to allow me to share my story. And so it's very honored to be here. The last 6 months, I think it's been scary. It's been challenging, both professionally and personally, but there's been many eye-opening opportunities as well. So mid-March, in less than 48 hours, I took my in-studio group fitness classes to at-home live stream classes, meaning teachers, instead of teaching to a group of people in-house, were teaching to a tablet or a phone, alone in the studio or at home. The problem is Pure Barre is really, truly a lot more than just a workout class for so many. There's a mental health aspect. We are the third space for people to come to socially connect. So I spend a lot of time on Facebook, inside our private group where we live streamed, trying to stay connected with the members, encourage them, and figure out how to keep them engaged. So it's almost 100% on retention on the business and 0 expansion. So even through that, opening 4 weeks ago, we're down 50% in membership. But I think truly amazing is that the community we fostered, we saw a role reversal, where instead of teachers encouraging, supporting members, they are the most loyal members that are supporting the business, myself, my teachers, and it's been incredible to see.
Outstanding. Thank you. So again, we're hearing messages that maybe we're not used to hearing. Messages about it was painful, it was scary. All of us can relate to that, whether we're willing to acknowledge it in the same way Kirsten did or not. Many of you have had similar experiences. So Emily, I'm going to go to you next. So like these other business owners, you've been preparing to reopen for a really, really long time. And I'm sure it felt like forever to you guys. So let's talk a little bit about what Friday means to you and to Studio C and how this has changed your view on business moving forward.
So as for many, this has been the most incredible whiplash of a year. We were this week a year ago in the midst of opening Studio Park, and there was lightsabers and flash paper and Obi-Wan Kenobi involved. And so we were expanding the scale of our company to almost double with one major investment in downtown Grand Rapids. And then COVID came, and we essentially shut everything down, and it's now been more than 6 months. As we look to reopening, we have invested for 75 years in public gathering spaces, and we're so proud of that, and we think that there's an importance in our community of people gathering, and yet that's fraught with some more challenges this year than ever before. And it's been important for our industry, the theater industry, to think not just locally or nationally, but even internationally about the opening strategy. We're dependent in a way that's a little bit different than restaurants or some other businesses that operate in a more localized way on an industry that is very, very focused on getting it right. They don't want to release new movie product and have the reputation of that be anything other than a positive experience and a healthy experience and a good one for all of the customers involved. And so as we're looking towards this week, there's been 7 months of planning, and it's been very collaborative, and that's been interesting. You think of theater companies as being competitive, but it's been very collaborative in figuring out what are the cinema-safe standards that we can arrive at and collectively kind of prove and create space that people both feel comfortable in and are truly safe in. And so that set of standards is something that companies have voluntarily committed to across the country, and we're pretty proud of that work, and we're really gratified to see that in the 48 states where theaters are open, that's been proving to be very effective and not a source of spread of pandemic. But as we're looking at this week, we are in it for the long game. We're in it for making sure that our relationship to the communities in which we operate is a strong one, and we're going slow and steady and trying to do things right in a way that doesn't jeopardize that.
Outstanding. So we're hearing some themes, right? So we heard Emily use the word collaborative. We heard about collaborating across industries, competitors working together to ensure they can navigate an uncertain future. So I'm going to open up the floor now for the next few questions, and would just encourage our panelists to just jump in. So my first question for the three of you is a common theme we hear is about the importance of communicating with your team throughout all of this. And I wonder if there's any strategies or maybe tactics that you all have used to stay connected with your team and to keep them together over the last 7 months or so.
I will jump in.
Thank you, Chris.
Let's just keep the order the same. I think that my communication response can be summed up as vulnerability, and which is not something that I was that familiar with or used to doing. I think I can speak on behalf of a lot of business owners or leaders who pride themselves on having the answers to problems and to being the person that people can come to. But I realized early on that I did not have the answers, and there was no point in implying that I did. So we opened up the process of managing the company to our team members. We let them design the COVID protocols for customers and for employees so that they felt safe, since we were asking them to forego unemployment benefits and come back to work for us. It was important that they take ownership over that, even though it probably cost us more, or we made less money because of it. It was still absolutely the right call, because I want my employees to want to come back to work for me after this is all over. And my business partner and I did something we never thought we'd do, and we opened up the books to our team and showed them exactly how much money we were losing. We made sure I had red ink in the printer so we could print off our profit and losses and show it to them. And it was the right call, and I think it really made people understand, empathize with the cause, and become invested in the company's success, because they were shown a window into it that they hadn't seen before.
Outstanding. Kirsten or Emily?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with vulnerability, number one. And I am also guilty of being a leader that felt like I needed all the answers. Have any problem, come to me, I'll solve it for you. But I think the pandemic proved that it wasn't true, and I don't have all the answers, and sometimes my idea is not going to be the best idea. But I also want to add empathy, and I think we heard that word used earlier. Chris just did. I think everybody's going through something, right? Professionally or personally, we just don't know. So I think it was important for me to communicate through empathy. Set an example of what I want to be done, like the way I want it to be done, but keep an open mind and ask if they have the capacity to do it right now. I think I ask a lot of grace from myself, but also give grace to others.
Awesome, thank you. Emily, anything you'd add?
Yeah, I have two things to add, and just appreciate those thoughts. One is we have a long company tradition of beginning meetings with good news. And this is a year where the wrong has felt very strong, and that means it's been extra important to do that. So we've tried to celebrate success whenever we can, in whatever weird small ways we've seen success. You know, our Getty Drive-In is a theater that we've never focused a lot of attention on, and it has been going gangbusters this summer. And Kevin Sims, who's one of my favorite theater managers, you know, he's as old school as the day is long, and he has gotten into being a data junkie and like reporting on, you know, the ratio of credit card transactions, which we've been trying to push, and pre-sales and all that. And so those successes have been important to acknowledge and celebrate, even in the midst of all of these challenges, and making sure that the company is aware of that. And then the second thing is, there's a quote that my brother JD brought to our attention this last week or two. It's Sydney Harris, who says that happiness is a direction, not a place. And so we have been, you know, we've been rolling with a lot of unexpected challenges this year, and sometimes blindsided by news that we weren't expecting. And it's been really hard. And I would say that there's been a little bit of a formula or a pattern to how that's been engaged with leaders in our company that I've really appreciated. And one is just kind of acknowledging that empathy of, hey, we see this, we feel it. But then in terms of a direction, not a place, there's a clarification about what's known. There's an identification about what isn't known, and there's kind of some collaborative work that goes into identifying what our next steps are for now. And that has obviously changed every couple of weeks as we've been adjusting. But that sort of 3 steps of this is what we know, and let's make sure that everyone's on the same page. And then sometimes I think companies miss sort of identifying where's the gaps in knowledge that we're working towards understanding better. And then regardless of all that, we have to keep moving in order for people to feel happily engaged. And so here's where we're going.
Good. Happiness is a direction, not a place. You heard data, vulnerability, and empathy. To pull that stuff out is so important because you're hearing different leadership messages. 5 years ago, I suspect, now I wasn't in this chair 5 years ago, we may not have heard those types of messages from business leaders. This combination of emotional health and mental health and business health, all kind of coming together in a difficult time, gives us reason for optimism to continue down the direction, as Emily identified, of happiness. So let me move to this next question. So some of the innovative things that you all have done have required being outside. So this is maybe a little lighter, more tactical question in that all of your businesses have embraced like the beautiful Michigan outdoors. But occasionally the Michigan outdoors isn't quite as beautiful or conducive to that. So I'm curious, as the seasons change, how are each of you preparing to deal with that in the context of your business that's taking advantage of the outdoors?
I can jump in. As you mentioned, we took some of our classes outdoors, and our members opened up their backyards to us. And when that's not possible, I invited people to come do classes curbside. And if you know Grand Rapids, you know East Beltline. If you know East Beltline, you know. It was not the best idea ever, but we made it work. So with the season change, I'm actually happily to stick with in-studio classes or live streaming classes.
Thanks, Kirsten.
For us, in the short term, we were hoping for a little hardiness on behalf of our customers and a willingness to layer up as we squeeze every bit of the good weather that's remaining this fall. I never checked the 7-day forecast more in my life than this last month. But before COVID hit, we were already trending more toward takeout for our pizza and end of our business, and even beer delivery. And COVID made it very clear to us that both as a short-term and a long-term strategy, we had to figure out a way to monetize that end of it and stop hoping that customers will enjoy your product in the way that you want them to, and start understanding that that may change. And I feel that to some extent, consumer confidence in dining out has been permanently eroded for some people. And it's my job to figure out a way to get Mitten products to people wherever they may be, if that's at home. And so we're working on a second takeout operation currently to get us through winter 2020 and beyond.
Outstanding. Thanks, Chris. Emily?
Yeah, I would just acknowledge that the outdoor programming has been so important, both in terms of keeping the creative juices of our team flowing and engaged during this time, as well as keeping a relationship with our customers. Winter's coming. We think that some of what we have learned with outdoor will sustain into the future and for as long as people will enjoy coming to pop-up cinema. Studio Park, specifically in downtown Grand Rapids, was designed as a four-season space, and we're hoping to be able to live into that a little bit more. We are a company that benefits from both the social design and the physical design of our theaters. And so as we're able to reopen during this fall season, there are things that we have as advantages in that we have really high ceilings and robust HVAC systems, and we can space groups apart from each other in ways that don't work as well in some other indoor spaces. And also the social dynamics of theaters where people are primarily facing a screen and not talking to each other during the movie or socializing as much do make it one of the safer of indoor spaces. So we do feel that we'll be able to turn to that to some degree, although our capacity will be limited significantly from what it is at maximum capacity during normal times.
Outstanding. So we're hearing these similar messages, right, of like continuous adaptation and agility. So we adjust to outdoor spaces. Now we readjust to indoor spaces. You heard somebody refer to permanently changed, stepping forward. So again, different businesses doing different things, but some similar themes that are coming out. So lastly, let's just acknowledge that this has been a very trying time. And we know that as leaders, you must stay positive for your team and your community. We also know that what we sometimes project as leaders isn't our reality. I wonder what it's really been like. Facebook might tell us one story, or rehearsed speeches might tell us one story. But I'd be curious if you're willing just to give us a little insight into what the reality of business leadership during this time has been for you.
I'll go. So my business is a heavily membership-based business. We truly try to get to know our members more than just their faces and their names. So truth be told, with every membership cancellation that came in the last 6 months, I found it to be painful. And every single one felt like a breakup. And I think as a business owner, I take everything more seriously, and I perhaps take it more personally than I should. So I think it's important to mention that outwardly, people think I handle everything behind the scene, but truthfully, I've asked my staff to take over that portion for me the last 6 months. It's okay to admit that that's my weakness, and I truly have them to be very thankful to keep my sanity.
Yes.
So rely on your team, and it's okay to just know your weaknesses and strengths.
Thank you, Kirsten. Other thoughts on what the reality of leadership, Emily, for you or Chris, for you, has been like?
Oh, this has been a really hard year. So all of the things that we were anticipating going into 2020, this was the year of big vision. It's even aligned with the date, right? And so we'd made these big investments, and we were anticipating being able to live into them, and putting that on hold and seeing that at risk is so incredibly hard. But we're a company with 75-year roots in this region, and we keep reminding ourselves that the way that we've built our company and the way that we have built relationships that are both with business partners and community partners are about being long-term stakeholders. And that's both made it easier and harder, because the way that we honor our commitments and also are unable to honor commitments during this time is much more personal, and you speak to how it feels very personal, and so that's certainly been true for us, but it has also meant, I think, in being a West Michigan company and interconnected with our bank and other West Michigan companies, it's meant that there's more creativity, there's been more collaboration, more flexibility, and we hope more resiliency as we get through to the other side of this. And so there's been some really beautiful aspects to that too, but there's just no denying there's some days that are brutally hard.
No doubt. Thanks, Emily. Chris, anything that you'd add?
Yeah, as they say, Facebook tells one story, and I certainly use my social media to share accomplishments or goofy nonsense, which I delight in, and it cheers me up a lot. But that obviously doesn't tell the whole story, and anybody that knows me or has known me for a long time knows that I do struggle with moderate to severe mental health issues, even in the best of times, and this time has been extraordinarily difficult for me and for a lot of people that I know. It's been the hardest time that I can remember. And there's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on with business leaders. The American entrepreneur archetype is be unflappable, nothing gets you down, and having to project that all the time and not speak about the panic attacks and the complete lack of restorative sleep that I think we're all experiencing. I can't remember the last time I had a great night's sleep and woke up feeling refreshed. And I feel that this is going to be the main lingering issue from COVID. I think economically we'll come back. I think everything will come back, but mental health has been brought to the forefront for a lot of people. I talk to people all the time that never had issues before that are encountering them now. And I think it's going to be the mark of a great company past 2020 to figure out how to address those within an organization. How does mental health care fit into the company's health plan? And I hope that that is a legacy from this time period, because I think we're all experiencing it. And I hope also that this is the global event that destigmatizes these struggles permanently. My friend Amy shared a meme the other day. Memes are another great distraction during COVID that said, lower your shoulders, unclench your jaw, and take your tongue off the roof of your mouth. And as I read that, I realized I was doing all three of those things simultaneously, not even aware of it, just carrying this albatross of stress around every day while trying to act like I wasn't. And I think we all need to recognize that we need to take care of ourselves, and companies need to find a strategy for this going forward for their employees if they want the best for them and the best out of them.
Outstanding. So let me just say thank you to our panel. So thank you for putting words to feelings that the vast majority of the leaders that are watching today are experiencing. And perhaps through your vulnerability today and talking about the hard work of leadership in this time and talking about the growing mental health crisis in our country can give others the courage to do similar things, to talk about it, to talk about the difficulties of leadership, that it is hard and we don't have all the answers as individuals, but together we'll be able to continue to navigate. So if you would, just join me for a virtual round of applause for our panel. Virtual. Shortly, we'll hear from Elsa Voss with our next leadership lesson. Now, let's take a moment to hear a couple more words from our sponsor and the Chamber.